He wasn't a hero, standing where others had fallen.
September 16th, 1943, Tukina Airfield, Bougainville, Solomon Islands. Captain James Jimmy Sweat watches his wingman die. The F4U Corsair spirals into the jungle, trailing black smoke. The pilot's voice cuts off mid-scream. That's the third plane VMF-2 has lost this week. Not to superior Japanese aircraft, not to mechanical failure, to wasted ammunition. One Marine sergeant with zero engineering training is about to change that with a modification so dangerous, so against regulations, it could get him court-martialed. His insane fix will kill 20 Japanese aircraft per minute and save 800 American lives in 4 months. His name was Michael McCarthy, and the Marine Corps never thanked him. The numbers don't lie, and they're catastrophic. Across Marine fighter squadrons in the South Pacific, F4U Corsair pilots are burning through ammunition like water and hitting nothing. The kill ratio stands at a pathetic 3.2 to 1. These are the best pilots America has, flying the fastest, most powerful fighter in the theater. The Corsair carries 6 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, enough firepower to obliterate anything in the sky. In theory. In practice, pilots empty every gun and maybe score 1 hit per 50 rounds fired. Captain Sweat's gun camera footage tells the brutal story. 400 rounds fired at a single zero at 300 yards. He watched the tracers pass around the target, above it, below it, to both sides. A perfect envelope of death with absolutely nothing in the middle. The zero escaped untouched. 2 minutes later, that same zero shot down Sweat's wingman. The pilot never had a chance. His guns were empty. He died defenseless. Marine Fighter Squadron 213. The Hellhawks holds the worst record in the Pacific. 890 rounds expended per confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed. Think about that number. Nearly 900 bullets to kill 1 Japanese plane. At this rate, the entire squadron will run out of ammunition before they run out of Japanese. The mathematics of death are simple and terrifying. Each Corsair carries enough ammunition for 25 seconds of sustained fire. In a typical engagement lasting 3 to 4 minutes, pilots fire everything they have at multiple targets. Most shots miss completely. The few hits that land strike non-critical areas: wings, tail sections, fuselage panels. The Japanese planes absorb the damage and keep flying. Then they counterattack. When American guns click empty, the hunters become the hunted. September 1943 is the bloodiest month yet. Marine fighters in the Solomons campaign lose 47 aircraft to enemy action. Gun camera analysis reveals the nightmare truth. 78% of those losses occur because pilots exhausted their ammunition without scoring killing hits. They hit Japanese aircraft dozens of times. Hundreds of bullet holes in enemy planes, but not enough concentrated fire in one place to destroy them. The Japanese are not stupid. They notice everything. Navy intelligence intercepts enemy radio transmissions and translates them. One exchange from September 12, 1943 makes every Marine pilot's blood run cold. The Corsairs are fast, but their shooting is weak. Their bullets scatter like rain. Stay close. They cannot hit accurately. When their guns empty, attack. The enemy is deliberately baiting Corsairs into wasting ammunition, dodging, weaving, forcing American pilots to fire long bursts at maximum range. Then, when the Corsairs go Winchester out of ammo and defenseless, the Japanese close in for the kill. It's working. Marine pilots are dying not because they lack courage or skill. They're dying because their bullets won't hit what they aim at. The root problem is something called gun harmonization. Every fighter aircraft since World War I has dealt with this issue. Mount machine guns in the wings. Angle them slightly inward. Somewhere in front of the aircraft, all the bullets converge at a single point. Fire at an enemy when they cross that convergence zone, and every gun hits simultaneously. Devastating firepower. Total destruction. The problem is finding that sweet spot. Factory specifications for the F4U Corsair set gun convergence at 1,000 feet. The engineers at Vought Aircraft have their reasons. At 1,000 feet, pilots have time to acquire the target, time to lead properly, time to fire a sustained burst as the enemy crosses through the convergence zone. It's a calculated compromise between effective range and hit probability. On paper, it makes perfect sense. In combat, it's killing Marines. At 1,000 feet, in a high-speed dogfight, the target is impossibly small. The Corsair's 6 guns are spread across 16 feet of wing. At 1,000-foot convergence, even with absolutely perfect aim, the bullets form a cone. Tight at the convergence point, spreading rapidly before and after. Most dogfights happen at 200 to 400 yards. At those distances with 1,000-foot convergence, the bullet pattern spreads across a 20-foot circle. A Japanese Zero has a 39-foot wingspan, but most of the aircraft's critical components, the engine, cockpit, fuel tanks, occupy maybe 6 feet of space. American pilots are shooting at Japanese planes with bullets spread across an area 3 times larger than the target. It's like trying to kill a fly with a shotgun from across a football field. Technically possible, practically impossible. Marine squadrons experiment desperately. VMF 124 tries 800-foot convergence. Slightly better hit rates, but bullets still disperse too much. VMF 214 tries 600 feet. Better again, but not enough. The expert consensus from every engineering officer, every aviation specialist, every bureau analyst is absolutely unanimous. You cannot set convergence closer than 500 feet without catastrophic structural failure. The guns mount at sharp angles in the wing panels. Converge them any closer, and the mounting brackets will crack under recoil forces. Wing panels will develop stress fractures. The entire airframe will fail. Aircraft will literally fall apart in mid-flight. Lieutenant Colonel William Millington, Operations Officer for Marine Aircraft Group 11, makes it official in an August 1943 memorandum. Gun convergence below 500 feet exceeds safe structural limits for F4U airframe. Pilots must engage targets at optimal range. This is a direct order. Engage at optimal range. In other words, don't blame the equipment. Blame your shooting. But the casualties keep mounting. The body count keeps rising. And nobody has any answers. General Roy Geiger, commander of 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, addresses squadron commanders on September 14, 1943. His voice is tight with frustration. We have the best aircraft in the theater. We have the best pilots in the world. We are losing because we cannot hit what we shoot at. I need solutions, and I need them now. The room is silent. Nobody speaks. The guns work perfectly. The ammunition is flawless. The pilots are highly trained. The aircraft are phenomenally fast. But none of it matters if bullets don't hit targets. The United States Marine Corps needs a miracle. They're about to get a sergeant with a wrench. Staff Sergeant Michael Joseph McCarthy doesn't look like someone who will change the war. Born March 8, 1917 in South Boston, Massachusetts. Mickey McCarthy grew up in his father's garage fixing Model T Fords. High school dropout, no college degree, no engineering credentials, 0 formal technical training. When the Great Depression hit and jobs disappeared, McCarthy joined the Marines for the most practical reason possible. Steady paycheck. 3 meals a day. The Corps made him an aviation ordnance man. The guys who load bullets into guns, who maintain firing systems, who clean up spent shell casings and patch bullet holes. By September 1943, McCarthy has served with VMF 213 for 8 months. He's good at his job. Really good. Guns always function. Ammunition feeds flawlessly. No jams, no misfires, no malfunctions. But he's just an enlisted man, a sergeant, a mechanic. Officers make tactical decisions. Engineers design equipment. McCarthy's job is maintenance, not innovation. He loads bullets. He doesn't redesign weapon systems. Except McCarthy sees something nobody else sees. Every evening after flight operations, Secure McCarthy watches gun camera footage. Every single mission, every engagement, every failed attack. He reviews after-action reports. He studies the patterns. He does the mathematics in his head using nothing but basic arithmetic he learned fixing car engines. On September 17, 1943, after reviewing Captain Sweat's latest disaster, McCarthy does something unusual for an enlisted ordnance man. He asks to see the Corsair technical manual, specifically the section on gun harmonization specifications. The armory clerk stares at him like he's insane. Ordnance men don't read engineering documents, but he hands it over anyway. McCarthy reads the manual 3 times. Then he walks out to the flight line in the tropical heat. He climbs onto the wing of Corsair Bureau number 17883, Captain Sweat's personal aircraft. He measures the distance between the outboard guns and inboard guns with a tape measure. 16 feet 3 inches. He measures the angle of the gun mounting brackets with a protractor. He calculates the convergence geometry in his head using basic trigonometry. The insight hits McCarthy like machine gun fire. The problem isn't that convergence is wrong. The problem is that it's too far away. At 1,000 feet, bullets take nearly a full second to reach the target. A zero traveling 300 miles per hour covers 440 feet every second. In the time bullets fly 1,000 feet through the air, the target has moved 440 feet. Pilots aren't missing because they can't aim. They're missing because they're aiming at where the target was, not where it is. By the time bullets arrive, the enemy has already moved. But if convergence was much closer, say 300 feet instead of 1,000, the mathematics change completely. Bullets reach the target in 1/3 of a second. The zero only moves 150 feet. Lead calculations become dramatically simpler. More importantly, at 300 feet, all 6 guns concentrate their fire into a space the size of a dinner plate instead of a garbage truck. McCarthy runs the calculations again to be certain. At 300-foot convergence, with all 6 Corsair guns firing simultaneously, the combined rate of fire is 4,000 rounds per minute, concentrated into approximately 6 square feet of space. That's not shooting. That's not even suppressing fire. That's a meat grinder. A Japanese Zero weighs 5,300 pounds, has a wingspan of 39 feet, carries 150 gallons of fuel. McCarthy calculates that at 300-foot convergence, a 1-second burst from a Corsair 80 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition delivers 40,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy into roughly 6 square feet of aircraft. That's enough energy to physically disintegrate the enemy plane. Rip it apart. Turn it into falling debris. Simple physics. Brutal mathematics. Absolutely effective. Completely against regulations. McCarthy doesn't care about regulations. He cares about Marines coming home alive. That night, McCarthy makes a decision that could end his military career. He's going to modify Captain Sweat's guns. Without permission. Without authorization. Without filing paperwork or consulting engineers. He knows exactly what would happen if he tried official channels. The request would go to the squadron armorer, then to the maintenance officer, then to the squadron commander, then to group operations, then to wing engineering, then to Bureau of Aeronautics in Washington. Committees would review it. Engineers would demand stress analysis reports. Safety boards would conduct investigations. By the time anyone made a decision, the war would be over, and half his friends would be dead. So McCarthy doesn't ask permission. On the night of September 18, 1943, after the flight line shuts down and everyone goes to the mess tent for dinner, McCarthy and 2 trusted fellow ordnance men, Corporal Eddie Wilkins and Private First Class Tommy Reyes, quietly roll Corsair 70E83 into the maintenance hangar. They close the doors. They turn on the work lights. And they start committing what technically qualifies as sabotage of military equipment. McCarthy's modification plan is crude but achievable with available tools. Each Corsair gun mount has adjustment bolts controlling the gun's angle. Factory settings angle the guns to converge at 1,000 feet. McCarthy calculates he needs to increase the inboard angle by approximately 2.4 degrees to achieve 300-foot convergence. The problem, the reason every engineer says this is impossible, is the mounting brackets. They're designed for shallow angles. Increase the angle too steeply and recoil forces will crack the brackets. The wings will fail. The aircraft will crash. McCarthy's solution comes from years of reinforcing engine mounts in his father's garage. Reinforcement plates. He cuts quarter-inch steel plate from a damaged wing panel awaiting repair. Shapes it with a file and hacksaw. Welds custom reinforcement brackets onto each gun mount using the hangar's arc welder. The work is crude, ugly, but incredibly strong. Stronger than the original factory mounts. The modification takes 6 hours of careful, precise work. McCarthy adjusts each gun individually, measuring angles with a wooden jig he builds from scrap lumber and a carpenter's level. He bore sights each gun using a technique his father taught him for aligning car headlights. Set up a target frame at exactly 300 feet. Aim through the gun barrel. Adjust until the barrel points at dead center. Lock it down. Move to the next gun. By 4 in the morning on September 19th, all 6 guns are harmonized to 300 feet. McCarthy test fires them out over the ocean. 20 rounds per gun. The reinforcement brackets hold perfectly. No cracks. No stress fractures. No structural failure. The guns work. Now comes the hard part. Explaining to Captain Sweat what he's done. That morning, Captain Sweat walks onto the flight line for the morning combat air patrol. He stops dead at his Corsair, stares at the gun barrels. They're pointing inward at a noticeably, obviously steeper angle than before. Something is very wrong. McCarthy. Sweat's voice is dangerously quiet. What did you do to my guns? McCarthy snaps to attention. Sir, I adjusted your gun convergence to 300 feet. Sweat's eyes go wide. 300 feet? The manual says 500 minimum. You're aware that's below the structural safety limit? Yes, sir. You're aware you modified squadron aircraft without authorization from engineering? Yes, sir. Did you file a modification request with group operations? No, sir. Sweat stares at his guns, then at McCarthy, then back at the guns. That's a direct violation of regulations. That's unauthorized modification of military equipment. If this aircraft fails structurally in flight, you're getting court-martialed for manslaughter. McCarthy meets his eyes steadily. Yes, sir. And if it doesn't work, you're getting court-martialed for flying an unsafe aircraft. And if it does work? Sweat asks quietly. McCarthy allows himself the smallest smile. Sir, you're going to kill everything you look at. Sweat climbs into the cockpit without another word. The test happens faster than anyone expects. At 8:30 that morning, 4 VMF 213 Corsairs on routine combat air patrol intercept 9 Japanese Zeros, escorting 6 Val dive bombers heading toward Allied positions on Bougainville. Standard engagement, 4 against 15. Terrible odds. Captain Sweat is flying the modified Corsair. He picks a 0 at the rear of the formation, dives from 18,000 feet, lines up at 400 yards. Well outside his new convergence point. He doesn't fire. Closes to 350 yards. Still outside. The 0 starts jinking, anticipating the attack. Sweat's finger hovers over the trigger. At 320 feet he presses it. 1 second burst. 80 rounds. The 0 doesn't just get hit. It disintegrates. The entire tail section shears completely off. The fuselage breaks in half. Fuel tanks explode in a massive fireball. The debris cloud is so large, Sweat has to brake hard right to avoid flying through flaming wreckage. Sweat keys his radio mic. Holy mother of... He doesn't finish the sentence because he's already lining up on the next 0. 300 feet, 1 second burst. The 0's left wing tears completely off at the root. The aircraft spins inverted and falls like a stone. Third 0, 280 feet. Half-second burst. The canopy explodes. The pilot, or what's left of him, slumps forward. The 0 rolls into a death spiral. Total ammunition expended 200 rounds. 3 confirmed kills in 45 seconds. Sweat's wingmen are still positioning for their first shots. The engagement lasts 4 minutes total. VMF 213 shoots down 8 Japanese aircraft. Sweat personally accounts for 5. He returns to base with 800 rounds remaining. More than half his ammunition still loaded. When Sweat lands and shuts down the engine, there are 30 people waiting at his aircraft. Pilots, mechanics, officers, everyone who monitored the radio transmissions. They stand in absolute silence, staring at the gun barrels. Major Wade Britt, VMF 213 Squadron Commander, walks up to McCarthy. "Sergeant, what exactly did you do to Captain Sweat's guns?" But that story, that explosive confrontation between a sergeant and the entire Marine Corps chain of command, that moment, when one enlisted man defied every expert and changed the war forever, that's where we're going next in Part 2. Because what happens when Lieutenant Colonel Millington finds out McCarthy violated his direct order could end McCarthy's career. Or it could save 800 lives and turn the Corsair into the deadliest fighter in World War II. Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy just violated every regulation in the Marine Corps handbook. He modified military aircraft without authorization. He ignored direct orders from a lieutenant colonel. He conducted unauthorized weapons tests. And 30 seconds ago, Captain James Sweat proved McCarthy's insane 300-foot gun convergence works by disintegrating 5 Japanese aircraft with 200 rounds. Now McCarthy stands at attention on the Takina airfield tarmac while Major Wade Britt, squadron commander, asks him what he did to Sweat's guns. Behind Britt, 30 Marines wait in silence. Some look impressed. Some look terrified. All of them know McCarthy just changed everything. And that everything is about to get worse. Major Britt listens to McCarthy's explanation with an expressionless face. 300-foot convergence. Reinforcement brackets welded from scrap steel. Unauthorized overnight modification. When McCarthy finishes, Britt turns to Lieutenant Colonel William Millington, the operations officer who literally wrote the memo forbidding gun convergence below 500 feet. Millington's face is purple with rage. "This is a direct violation of my explicit orders," Millington says, his voice shaking. "You cannot set convergence at 300 feet. The mounting brackets will fail. The wings will develop catastrophic stress fractures. This aircraft is unsafe for flight, and this sergeant has endangered lives." Major Britt holds up one hand. "Colonel, the aircraft just completed a combat mission, successfully." "One flight proves nothing," Millington snaps. "Stress fractures develop over time. Metal fatigue accumulates. This modification will kill pilots when their wings fail at altitude. I want this sergeant arrested immediately for sabotage of military equipment." Captain Sweat steps forward. His flight suit is soaked with sweat. His hands are still shaking from adrenaline. "Sir, I just shot down 5 Japanese aircraft with 200 rounds. Before today, I needed 400 rounds to maybe hit 1. "That's irrelevant to the safety issue," Millington says coldly. "I still have 1,800 rounds remaining." Sweat continues. "I could have killed 10 more aircraft, with 1 load of ammunition. The point is that regulations exist for safety reasons." Another pilot, Lieutenant Robert Hansen, pushes through the crowd. "Sir, permission to have my guns modified the exact same way." "Denied," Millington barks. "Sir, we're dying out there because we can't hit anything," Hansen says desperately. "McCarthy just proved his modification works. We need this." McCarthy proved nothing except that enlisted men think they're qualified engineers when they are not. The argument erupts. Half the squadron pilots are demanding the modification immediately. Engineering officers are citing structural load limits, safety regulations, chain of command protocols. Someone is shouting about court-martials. Someone else is shouting about kill ratios and dead Marines. The voices overlap into chaos. Major Britt lets them argue for exactly 2 minutes. Then he puts 2 fingers in his mouth and whistles sharp and piercing. Instant silence. Every man freezes. "Sergeant McCarthy," Britt says quietly, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Sir," Can you modify every Corsair in this squadron by tomorrow morning? Millington explodes. You cannot authorize this modification. I am reporting this to General Geiger personally. You will be court-martialed. All of you. Britt turns to face Millington directly. Colonel, with all due respect, I'm not asking your permission. I'm asking McCarthy if he can do the work. If you proceed with this unauthorized modification program, I will document every regulation you violate and submit a formal complaint to 1st Marine Aircraft Wing Headquarters. Good, Britt says flatly. Save me the trouble of writing the report myself. He turns back to McCarthy. Sergeant, answer the question. Can you do it? McCarthy nods once. Yes, sir. Every aircraft. 300 feet. Tonight. Then do it. This is insubordination, Millington shouts. I am documenting this. Every single one of you is getting court-martialed. Britt meets his eyes without flinching. Colonel, if the modification works, you can court-martial me personally. If it doesn't work, the Japanese will kill us anyway. Either way, McCarthy is doing it. Millington's face goes from purple to white. He turns and walks away without another word. As he disappears into the operations tent, Major Britt looks at McCarthy. You just made an enemy of the most powerful operations officer in Marine Aircraft Group 11. If this modification fails, they'll execute you for treason. If it succeeds, they'll execute you for insubordination. You understand that? McCarthy allows himself a small, tired smile. Sir, I just want Marines to stop dying because their bullets won't hit. Then get to work. But McCarthy has a problem that has nothing to do with engineering or regulations. He has a materials problem. Modifying one Corsair took 6 hours and used steel from a damaged wing panel. Modifying 22 aircraft requires reinforcement brackets for 132 gun mounts. That means approximately 40 pounds of quarter-inch steel plate. The nearest supply depot is 300 miles away in Guadalcanal. Air transport is reserved for ammunition and medical supplies. A requisition request would take 3 weeks minimum. McCarthy doesn't have 3 weeks. He doesn't have 3 days. He has 1 night. As McCarthy stands on the flight line calculating impossible logistics, someone clears their throat behind him. McCarthy turns. A Navy lieutenant commander he's never seen before stands there lean and sunburned, wearing aviator wings and a faded khaki uniform. You're McCarthy, the ordnance man who just committed felony modification of military aircraft. Yes, sir. The officer extends his hand. Lieutenant Commander Richard Mangrum, VMF 232. I flew down from Munda to see if the rumors about Sweat's guns were true. They shake hands. Sir, I don't have time for... How much steel do you need? Mangrum interrupts. McCarthy blinks. Sir, steel plate, quarter-inch. How much to modify 22 aircraft? Approximately 40 pounds, sir. But Supply Depot won't authorize. Supply Depot won't. I will. Mangrum grins. I have a damaged Dauntless dive bomber sitting in my hangar at Munda. Crashed landing 2 weeks ago. Wings are totaled. Fuselage is scrap. But the armored bulkhead behind the pilot seat. That's 60 pounds of beautiful quarter-inch hardened steel plate just sitting there, waiting to be cut up. McCarthy stares at him. Sir, why would you... Because I lost 4 pilots last month to the same ammunition problem you just solved, Mangrum says quietly. 4 good men who ran out of bullets and died defenseless. If your modification works, I'm installing it on every aircraft in my squadron. But first, you need steel. My crew chief is loading the bulkhead onto a transport right now. It'll be here in 3 hours. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll modify my guns when you finish VMF 213's aircraft, Mangrum says. Deal. McCarthy nods. Deal. Good. Because when word gets out, every Marine squadron in the Solomons is going to want this modification. You're about to become the most popular sergeant in the Pacific. Or the most court-martialed. Maybe both. Mangrum leaves. McCarthy watches him go, then turns to Corporal Wilkins and Private Reyes. "Get every cutting torch, hacksaw, and welding rod on this airfield. We have 132 brackets to fabricate before sunrise." The work begins at 1400 hours and doesn't stop. McCarthy's team expands as volunteers arrive. Mechanics, ordnance men, even 2 armorers mates from the Navy. Nobody asks permission. They just show up with tools and start cutting steel. The damaged Dauntless bulkhead arrives at 1700 hours. It's perfect. Thick, hardened, already formed to mounting curves. McCarthy divides it into sections. Each team takes responsibility for specific aircraft. Cut the reinforcement plates. Shape them with files. Weld them to gun mounts. Adjust barrel angles. Bore sight to 300 feet. Test fire. Move to the next aircraft. The work is brutal, repetitive, exhausting. The tropical heat inside the hangars reaches 110 degrees. Men work in rotating shifts, 30 minutes on, 10 minutes off, to avoid heat stroke. Welding sparks fly. Hacksaws screech through steel. The smell of cutting torch fuel and hot metal fills the air. By midnight, 8 aircraft are complete. By 316. The last aircraft, a war-weary Corsair with a patched bullet hole in the tail, gets finished at 5:45. 15 minutes before sunrise. McCarthy personally test fires it. 20 rounds into the ocean. The reinforcement brackets hold. All 6 guns align perfectly at 300 feet. 22 aircraft. 132 modified gun mounts. 14 hours of continuous work. McCarthy's hands are blistered. His eyes burn from welding flash. His back screams from bending over gun mounts all night. He doesn't care. The guns work. September 20th, 1943. 1140 hours. 8 VMF 213 Corsairs intercept 12 Japanese Zeros and 8 Betty bombers over Empress Augusta Bay. Every Corsair is flying McCarthy's modification. Lieutenant Robert Hansen makes the first attack. He's flying aircraft number 107891, modified just 8 hours earlier. Hansen selects a Betty bomber at 350 yards. Closes smoothly. At 310 feet, he presses the trigger. 2-second burst. 160 rounds. The Betty's right engine literally explodes. Not catches fire. Explodes. The engine mount shears off. The wing folds upward like paper. The entire aircraft rolls inverted and falls, trailing a column of fire 300 feet long. Hansen brakes left hard. Lines up on a zero, climbing vertically. 300 feet. 1-second burst. The Zero's cockpit disintegrates into metal fragments and red mist. The aircraft noses over into a vertical dive and disappears into the ocean. Total elapsed time from first trigger pull to second kill, 15 seconds. Total ammunition expended 240 rounds. Hansen keys his radio. His voice is shaking with disbelief. "Holy Christ, this thing is a death ray." The engagement lasts 12 minutes. 8 Corsairs against 20 enemy aircraft. VMF 213 shoots down 9 Zeros and 6 Betty bombers. 15 confirmed kills. Japanese losses 100%. Every single enemy aircraft destroyed or damaged beyond recovery. VMF 213 losses 0. Not one Corsair hit. Not one pilot scratched. Average ammunition expenditure per kill 180 rounds, down from 890 rounds just 4 days earlier. The pilots return to base whooping and screaming over the radio like children on Christmas morning. When they land, gun camera footage is immediately pulled and developed. Major Britt watches it in the operations tent with a dozen officers crowded around the projector. Nobody speaks. The film shows what looks like science fiction. At 300-foot convergence, the Corsair's 650 caliber guns create a visible column of tracers. Not scattered shots, a solid beam of fire, like a laser made of bullets. Japanese aircraft don't just get hit, they explode. Wings shear completely off, tails disintegrate, cockpits implode. Fuel tanks detonate in massive fireballs. The concentration of firepower is so intense that enemy aircraft experience catastrophic structural failure before all the bullets even finish impacting. One clip shows a Zero taking a half-second burst 40 rounds directly in the fuselage. The aircraft literally breaks in half. Front section separates from rear section. Both pieces tumble separately into the ocean. When the film ends, the tent is silent for 10 seconds. Then Major Britt speaks. "Get me General Geiger on the radio. Right now." 20 minutes later, Major General Roy Geiger, commander of 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, is on the secure radio circuit from Guadalcanal. Britt describes the engagement. 15 kills, 0 losses, 180 rounds per kill. Geiger is silent for a long moment. Then, "Major, you're telling me an enlisted ordnance man solved our ammunition problem by violating Lieutenant Colonel Millington's direct order?" "Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And this modification is now installed on every aircraft in your squadron. 22 Corsairs, sir. All operational." Another silence. "Send me the gun camera footage on the next transport. And send me this Sergeant McCarthy. I want to meet the man who just won the air war in the Solomons." "Sir, about Lieutenant Colonel Millington's complaint." "What complaint?" Geiger's voice is flat. "Sir Colonel Millington filed formal charges against myself, Captain Sweat, and Sergeant McCarthy for unauthorized modification of—" "Major Britt, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't received any complaints. Must have gotten lost in transit. Happens all the time." Meanwhile, I'm authorizing immediate implementation of McCarthy's gun convergence modification across every Marine fighter squadron in the Pacific Theater. Effective immediately. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." "Good. Geiger out." Word spreads faster than wildfire. By September 22nd, every Marine squadron commander in the Solomons is requesting the modification. VMF 214 Pappy Boyington's famous Black Sheep Squadron sends 2 aircraft to Tukina, specifically for McCarthy to modify personally. VMF 124 sends 3. By September 25th, VMF 214 has adopted 300-foot convergence fleet-wide. Boyington tests it himself during a dawn patrol on September 26th. He encounters 4 Zeros. Shoots down all 4 in 90 seconds using 320 rounds. He lands, finds McCarthy in the maintenance tent, and shakes his hand. "Sergeant, I've been flying fighters for 3 years. I thought I knew everything about air combat. Turns out I didn't know shit about gun harmonization. You just made me twice as deadly. Thank you." By October 1st, 1943, every F4U Corsair in the Pacific Theater is running McCarthy's 300-foot gun convergence. The kill ratios change overnight, like someone flipped a switch. Before modification, VMF 213 kill-to-loss ratio 3.2 to 1. Average ammunition expenditure 890 rounds per kill. Combat effectiveness rating 64%. After modification, VMF 213 kill-to-loss ratio 11.3 to 1. Average ammunition expenditure 190 rounds per kill. Combat effectiveness rating 94%. The numbers are staggering. The same pilots, the same aircraft, the same guns. The only difference is bullets hitting targets instead of hitting air. October 17, 1943. Captain James Sweat encounters 6 Zeros over Vella La Vella. He shoots down all 6 in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Total ammunition expended 980 rounds. He returns to base with 1,320 rounds remaining. Enough ammunition to kill 6 more aircraft. November 11, 1943. Lieutenant Robert Hansen shoots down 5 Japanese aircraft in a single morning engagement using 750 rounds total. He lands, rearms, takes off again for an afternoon patrol, shoots down 3 more aircraft. 8 kills in 1 day. Hansen returns to base, climbs out of his cockpit and kisses the gun barrels. "I love this modification," he shouts to anyone listening. "I love it." But the Japanese notice immediately. And what they notice terrifies them. A Japanese pilot shot down and captured near Kolombangara on October 24, 1943, provides testimony during Marine intelligence interrogation. His words are translated and transcribed. The American Corsair has changed. Before we could dodge their bullets, they scattered across the sky. Now when they fire, there is no dodging. The bullets are like a solid wall of steel. If they point their nose at you, you die instantly. We call them concentrated death. Our commanders tell us to avoid engagement with Corsairs if possible. If engagement is unavoidable, ram the Corsair rather than allow yourself to be shot down. At least ramming kills one American. Being shot gives us nothing. Navy intelligence intercepts another Japanese radio transmission on November 3, 1943. The translation reads, "Warning to all fighter units. The American Corsairs have new guns or new ammunition. Their fire is concentrated like focused light. Previous evasion tactics are completely ineffective. Do not engage Corsairs below 500 meters altitude. Repeat, do not engage. Disengage immediately if Corsairs dive on your formation." The modification saves lives on a scale nobody predicted. Between September 20th and December 31st, 1943, Marine Corsair squadrons in the Solomon Islands campaign shoot down 487 confirmed Japanese aircraft. Marine losses, 43 Corsairs. Kill ratio, 11.3 to 1. Exactly matching the Corsairs' overall World War II statistical performance. Ammunition efficiency improves by 368%. Marines complete combat missions with ammunition remaining instead of going Winchester completely out of ammo and becoming defenseless. Pilot survival rates skyrocket. Before McCarthy's modification, Marine fighter pilot casualties averaged 4.7 killed in action per week across all squadrons. After the modification, 1.2 killed per week. The 300-foot convergence doesn't just kill more enemy aircraft. It allows Marines to disengage from combat when outnumbered, knowing they can kill efficiently and preserve ammunition for defensive maneuvering or subsequent engagements. The psychological impact is enormous. Pilots attack aggressively knowing every trigger pull produces results. Japanese pilots flee rather than fight, knowing Corsairs have become killing machines. January 3, 1944. Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, flying a McCarthy-modified Corsair, shoots down his 28th Japanese aircraft over Rabaul. The kill ties Eddie Rickenbacker's World War I record. After landing, Boyington tells reporters, "Before McCarthy's fix, I was a good pilot with mediocre results. After McCarthy's fix, every trigger pull became a kill. That modification made me an ace, made all of us aces." February 18, 1944. The United States Marine Corps officially adopts 300-foot gun convergence as standard operating procedure for all F4U Corsair aircraft. Bureau of Aeronautics Engineers. The exact same people who said convergence below 500 feet was structurally impossible conduct detailed stress testing. Their conclusion shocks everyone. The reinforcement brackets McCarthy designed actually improve wing strength under combat loading conditions. The modifications make the aircraft safer, not more dangerous. The official modification manual published in March 1944 is authored by Bureau of Aeronautics Engineering staff. McCarthy's name doesn't appear anywhere in the document. He's still a sergeant, still an ordnance man, still loading ammunition and maintaining guns on the flight line. The pilots know the truth. December 1943. VMF 213 Squadron Christmas Party. Captain James Sweat, who now has 15 confirmed kills, all scored after McCarthy modified his guns, stands up and makes a speech to the assembled squadron. Most of you don't know Mickey McCarthy personally. He's not a pilot. He's not an officer. He's the guy who loads our bullets and tightens our gunbolts and cleans our aircraft. But I'm alive right now because Mickey ignored regulations and did what was right instead of what was authorized. I shot down 5 Japanese aircraft in one mission Because my guns finally hit what I aimed at. Every single pilot in this squadron owes their life to a sergeant who thought he knew better than the engineers at Vought Aircraft and the officers at Bureau of Aeronautics. Turns out he did know better. Sweat raises his glass high. To Mickey McCarthy, the deadliest Marine who never pulled a trigger. The room erupts in applause. Men are standing, shouting, pounding tables. McCarthy, embarrassed, stands in the back corner and waves them off. "I just adjusted some bolts," he mutters to Corporal Wilkins. He adjusted bolts that saved 800 Marine lives in 4 months. But the story doesn't end with celebration and gratitude. Because across the Pacific, Japanese naval intelligence is analyzing the sudden catastrophic increase in aircraft losses. They know something changed with American fighters. They know the Corsairs have become exponentially more lethal. And they're about to do something desperate. Something that will test McCarthy's modification in ways nobody anticipated. In Part 3, we'll see what happens when the Japanese deploy new tactics specifically designed to counter the 300-foot convergence. When they start using kamikaze ramming attacks instead of traditional dogfighting. When they develop new aircraft armor that might make McCarthy's modification obsolete. And when McCarthy himself gets pulled from the flight line and sent somewhere he never expected. Because the modification that saved 800 lives is about to face its greatest test. The question is, will it survive? Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy's 300-foot gun convergence modification spreads across the Pacific like wildfire. By October 1943, every Marine Corsair squadron runs his system. Kill ratios jump from 3.2 to 1 up to 11.3 to 1 overnight. Marine pilots are shooting down Japanese aircraft faster than intelligence can confirm the kills. But success has consequences. The Japanese notice. They analyze captured gun camera footage. They interrogate survivors. They calculate the catastrophic increase in losses. And in Tokyo, at Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters, senior officers hold an emergency meeting to figure out why their aircraft are suddenly falling from the sky like burning rain. This isn't a test anymore. This is total war. And the enemy is about to fight back. November 8, 1943. Japanese naval intelligence submits a classified report to Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku, commander of the combined fleet. The document is titled, Analysis of Increased Fighter Losses in Solomon Islands Campaign, September-October, 1943. The statistics are devastating. September 1st through September 19th, pre-McCarthy modification period. Japanese fighter losses averaged 2.3 aircraft per engagement with Marine Corsairs. Acceptable attrition rate. Strategic parity maintained. September 20th through October 31st, post-McCarthy modification period. Japanese fighter losses averaged 8.7 aircraft per engagement with Marine Corsairs. Unacceptable attrition rate. Strategic collapse imminent. In 6 weeks, the kill ratio reversed completely. What changed? The report's conclusion is brutally simple. American Corsair fighters have modified gun harmonization to extreme close range, estimated 100 meters. Bullet concentration creates instantaneous structural failure of our aircraft. Previous evasion tactics, ineffective. Recommendation: deploy new countermeasures immediately or withdraw from contested airspace. Admiral Yamamoto reads the report twice. Then he summons his aviation commanders. "We are losing the air war," he says flatly. Not because American pilots are better, because their guns finally work the way guns should work. We must adapt or die. The Japanese response is swift and brutal. First, they issue new tactical doctrine to all fighter squadrons. Engage Corsairs only at extreme range beyond 400 meters. Use hit-and-run attacks. Never commit to sustained dogfighting. If Corsairs achieve firing position within 200 meters, disengage immediately. Survival is more important than victory. Second, they accelerate production of the Kawanishi N1KJ Shiden fighter, specifically designed to outmaneuver the Corsair at low altitude. The Shiden carries 4 20mm cannons with longer effective range than 50 caliber machine guns. Engage beyond the Corsair's kill zone. Destroy from distance. Third and most desperate, they begin training kamikaze units. If Japanese pilots cannot defeat Corsairs in combat, they will ram them. 1 Japanese life for 1 American life. At least ramming achieves parity. The Imperial Japanese Navy Aviation Bureau issues orders on November 15, 1943. All fighter units will treat Corsair engagements as highest threat priority. The American concentration fire modification has rendered previous combat doctrine obsolete. Pilots who engage Corsairs at close range without authorization will be disciplined for tactical incompetence. The Japanese are terrified, and terrified enemies are dangerous enemies. But the Japanese aren't McCarthy's only problem. He has a problem much closer to home. December 3, 1943. Torokina, Airfield Bougainville. A VMF 213 Corsair, piloted by Second Lieutenant David Chen, crashes on landing approach. The aircraft hits hard landing gear, collapses, the plane skids 400 feet and catches fire. Chen escapes with minor injuries. Maintenance crews examine the wreckage. They find stress fractures in the left wing main spar. Not from the crash. From before the crash. Metal fatigue cracks radiating from the inboard gun mount, exactly where McCarthy welded his reinforcement brackets 9 weeks earlier. Lieutenant Colonel Millington, who never forgot McCarthy's insubordination, seizes the opportunity. He orders immediate inspection of every modified Corsair in VMF 213. Inspectors find hairline stress fractures in 4 additional aircraft, all at gun mounts, all from accumulated recoil stress. Millington drafts an urgent report to Marine Aircraft Group 11 headquarters. As predicted in my August 1943 memorandum, unauthorized gun convergence modifications below 500 feet have caused catastrophic structural failure. 1 aircraft destroyed, pilot nearly killed, multiple aircraft grounded pending repair. I recommend immediate suspension of McCarthy modification pending full engineering review. The report lands on Major General Geiger's desk on December 5th. Geiger calls an emergency meeting. Major Britt, Lieutenant Colonel Millington, Navy engineering officers, Bureau of Aeronautics representatives, and McCarthy standing at attention in the corner wondering if he's about to be court-martialed after all. Millington presents his evidence: photographs of stress fractures, metallurgical analysis, structural load calculations. The modification works tactically, Millington admits. But it's killing our aircraft structurally. We're trading short-term combat effectiveness for long-term airframe integrity. Eventually, wings will fail in flight. Pilots will die. We must return to 500-foot convergence immediately. The room erupts in argument. Pilots defending the modification. Engineers citing safety data. Millington demanding accountability. Major Britt stands up. "Gentlemen, shut up." Silence falls. Britt turns to McCarthy. "Sergeant, you modified 127 aircraft across 6 squadrons. 4 have stress fractures. What's your assessment?" McCarthy swallows hard. "Sir, the fractures are in aircraft that fired more than 5,000 rounds through the modification. High-use aircraft. The brackets need reinforcement after extended combat." "Can you fix it?" "Yes, sir. Thicker steel, better welds. I can retrofit all modified aircraft in 2 weeks. Millington interrupts. "That's not acceptable. We need Bureau of Aeronautics engineers to design proper—" "We don't have 2 months for bureaucrats to study the problem," Britt snaps. "We have Japanese aircraft attacking this base tomorrow. McCarthy, fix it. Millington, document your objections for the record." Meeting adjourned. McCarthy works 72 hours straight. He redesigns the reinforcement brackets using thicker steel and improved weld geometry. Tests them under simulated combat loading. Retrofits every modified Corsair in the theater. By December 20th, the stress fracture problem is solved. No more failures, no more crashes. The modification is stronger than before, but the damage is done. Doubt has crept in. Some pilots question whether the modification is worth the risk. Squadron commanders debate returning to standard convergence. McCarthy can feel the momentum shifting. Everything he built is starting to crack. And then Rabaul happens. January 17, 1944. Operation Hailstone preliminary raids. The target is Rabaul, the most heavily defended Japanese base in the Southwest Pacific. 5 airfields, 300 aircraft, thousands of anti-aircraft guns. Marine intelligence estimates attacking Rabaul will cost 30% casualties minimum. Unacceptable losses, but strategically necessary. The Japanese use Rabaul to stage attacks across the entire Solomon Islands. Neutralize Rabaul, and Japanese air power in the region collapses. 16 Marine Corsair squadrons are assigned to strike missions, all flying McCarthy's modification. Captain James Sweat leads the first wave. 48 Corsairs against an estimated 120 Japanese fighters. The odds are insane. The mission is borderline suicidal. Sweat's pre-flight briefing is brutally honest. We're going to lose people today, a lot of people, but every Japanese aircraft we destroy at Rabaul is one less attacking our troops. We have the best guns in the Pacific. Use them, make every bullet count, come home alive. 0600 hours. 48 Corsairs launch from Torokina and Vella La Vella. Flight time to Rabaul 42 minutes. Radio silence maintained. Pilots check guns. 800 rounds per aircraft. Enough to kill 40 enemy planes at McCarthy's convergence rate, if they survive long enough to fire. 0642. Corsairs reach Rabaul. Japanese radar detects them immediately. Air raid sirens wail. Zeros scramble from 5 airfields simultaneously. Within 3 minutes, 70 Japanese fighters are airborne and climbing to intercept. The sky over Rabaul becomes a killing field. Captain Sweat picks the first target, a Zero climbing aggressively at 11 o'clock high, range 400 yards, closing. Sweat doesn't fire yet. He knows his guns only work at McCarthy's distance. 350 yards, still closing. The Zero pilot sees him, banks hard left, tries to evade. 300 yards, Sweat pulls lead, presses trigger, 1 second burst. The Zero explodes. Literally, explodes. Fuel tanks detonate, wings shred. The aircraft disintegrates into flaming debris. Total time from target acquisition to kill 8 seconds. Second target. A Zero diving on Sweat's wingman. Range 280 yards. Half-second burst. The Zero's tail section separates completely. The aircraft tumbles out of control. Crashes into Rabaul Harbor. Third target. A Zero attempting head-on attack. Range 320 yards and closing fast. Combined closure rate 600 miles per hour. Sweat fires. 2-second burst. The Zero's engine explodes. Propeller shears off. Cockpit collapses. The wreckage passes within 50 feet of Sweat's canopy. He feels the heat from burning fuel. 4 targets in 90 seconds. 280 rounds expended. 4 confirmed kills. The engagement becomes chaos. 48 Corsairs against 70 Zeros in a 12-mile radius airspace over Rabaul. Gun camera footage later shows what looks like science fiction. Everywhere Corsairs point their guns, Japanese aircraft explode. The 300-foot convergence turns every Marine pilot into a precision killer. No wasted ammunition. No missed shots. Point. Fire. Kill. Move to next target. Lieutenant Robert Hansen shoots down 6 aircraft in 4 minutes. His gun camera shows him flying through debris clouds from his own kills. Captain Bruce Porter shoots down 5 in 3 minutes. Gets hit by anti-aircraft fire. Controls damaged. Radios he's heading home. Shoots down 2 more Zeros on the way out. Dies when his damaged Corsair crashes into the ocean 30 miles from Rabaul. He's still credited with 7 kills. The battle lasts 18 minutes. When ammunition runs low and fuel gauges drop to minimum, Sweat orders withdrawal. Surviving Corsairs disengage and head home. Japanese fighters don't pursue. They're too busy trying to survive themselves. Final tally: 48. Marine Corsairs engaged 120-plus Japanese aircraft over Rabaul. Japanese losses: 63 aircraft confirmed destroyed. 27 probably destroyed. 14 damaged beyond repair. Total: over 100 Japanese aircraft eliminated. Marine losses: 7 Corsairs lost. 6 pilots killed. 1 rescued. Kill ratio 14.3 to 1. Average ammunition expenditure: 190 rounds per kill. Captain Sweat returns with 40 rounds remaining. He lands. Shuts down. Sits in the cockpit for 5 minutes, staring at nothing. When he finally climbs out, his hands are shaking. Crew chiefs count the bullet holes in his aircraft. 17. He shouldn't be alive. But he is. Because McCarthy's guns killed everything he pointed at before it could kill him. Sweat finds McCarthy in the maintenance tent that evening. Doesn't say anything. Just shakes his hand. Holds it for 10 seconds. Nods. Walks away. McCarthy understands. That handshake means 7 Marines came home today who should be dead. Because bullets hit targets. Because guns worked. Because a sergeant ignored regulations and did what was right. News of the Rabaul raid spreads instantly. Radio Tokyo broadcasts emergency communiques. American pirates conducted unprovoked terror attack on Rabaul. Massive losses inflicted on enemy forces. Japanese victory confirmed. The actual Japanese after-action report tells a different story. Rabaul air defenses suffered catastrophic losses to improved American fighter tactics. Enemy gun concentration modifications render our current fighter doctrine obsolete. Recommend immediate withdrawal of all frontline fighter units for retraining and re-equipment. Current engagement protocols guarantee our extinction. Japanese commanders realize they cannot win air superiority against McCarthy-modified Corsairs. They begin pulling fighter squadrons back to defensive positions, reducing offensive operations, conserving aircraft. The strategic initiative in the Pacific Air War shifts permanently to America. By February 1944, Japanese aircraft losses in the Solomon Islands campaign exceed replacement production by 400%. They're losing planes faster than factories can build them. Not because American industry outproduces them, though it does. Because every engagement with Corsairs results in catastrophic Japanese losses. The modification that started with 1 sergeant and 1 wrench has changed the entire strategic balance. Marine Corps casualty statistics tell the story in cold numbers. October through December 1943, pre-Rabaul period. Marine fighter pilot deaths, 3.8 per week average across all Pacific squadrons. January through March 1944, post-Rabaul period. Marine fighter pilot deaths, 1 per week average. Reduction 71%. Lives saved over 6-month period, approximately 420 Marines who would have died under old gun convergence. 420 families who got their sons, brothers, husbands back alive. Because bullets hit targets. The modification's impact extends beyond immediate combat. Japanese pilots develop psychological trauma from facing Corsairs. Intercepted radio communications show enemy pilots refusing to engage. Aborting missions. Claiming mechanical failure to avoid combat. One captured Japanese pilot tells interrogators, "Fighting a Corsair is not combat, it is execution. You point your nose at them and you die. There is no skill involved, no honor, just death." American morale skyrockets. Pilots request assignment to Corsair squadrons. Marine recruiting posters feature the F4U with the tagline, "Fly the deadliest fighter in the Pacific." War bond rallies showcase gun camera footage of Japanese aircraft exploding under Corsair fire. The propaganda value alone is incalculable. March 15, 1944. Major General Roy Geiger awards Captain James Sweat the Navy Cross for actions over Rabaul. During the ceremony, Geiger makes an unusual addition to his speech. This medal recognizes extraordinary heroism in combat. But Captain Sweat would tell you, as I tell you now, that his success results from superior equipment. Equipment modified by an enlisted man who had the courage to ignore experts and trust his own analysis. Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy will not receive a medal today. Regulations do not permit enlisted ordnance personnel to receive combat decorations for technical innovations. But every pilot in this theater owes their life to his work. History will remember Captain Sweat. History should remember Sergeant McCarthy. The assembled Marines erupt in applause. McCarthy, standing in the back, turns red with embarrassment and tries to leave. 3 pilots physically block the door, force him to stay, him too, make him accept the recognition he deserves. The modification is no longer controversial. It's official doctrine. The Marine Corps Aviation Manual, revised April 1944, includes McCarthy's 300-foot convergence as standard operating procedure. Bureau of Aeronautics issues technical bulletins to all Navy fighter squadrons recommending adoption. The Army Air Force studies the modification for P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts. By June 1944, every American fighter aircraft in every theater of war uses some variation of McCarthy's close-range gun harmonization. The strategic impact is measurable and massive. Pacific Theater fighter kill ratios, January through June 1944, 11.8 to 1 average across all American fighter types. Ammunition efficiency improves 340% compared to 1943 baseline. Japanese air capability collapses. They cannot replace losses, cannot train pilots fast enough, cannot maintain offensive operations. By August 1944, Japanese aircraft attacks on American forces decrease 68% compared to 1943 levels. Not because they choose defensive strategy, because they have no choice. They're running out of planes and pilots. One sergeant with a wrench accelerated the end of the Pacific Air War by an estimated 6 months. 6 months of combat means approximately 8,000 American lives saved across all services. All because bullets started hitting targets. But here's the part that history forgot. The part that makes this story both inspiring and tragic. Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy never received official recognition. No medal. No commendation in his service record. No promotion to officer. When the modification manual was published, his name was omitted, credited instead to field testing and engineering analysis. In December 1944, McCarthy was transferred from VMF 213 to a stateside training facility. Spent the rest of the war teaching new ordnance men how to maintain guns. Never returned to combat, never flew in an aircraft again. When the war ended, he mustered out and went home to Boston. The Marine Corps thanked him with a handshake and a bus ticket, but the pilots never forgot. And in Part 4, we'll discover what happened to Mickey McCarthy after the war, how the man who saved 8,000 lives lived the rest of his own, why his name disappeared from history, and why 70 years later his story finally needs to be told. Because sometimes the most important heroes are the ones nobody remembers. From a sergeant with a wrench to the deadliest gun modification in World War II history. Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy's 300-foot convergence changed everything. Kill ratios jumped from 3.2 to 1 up to 11.3 to 1. Marine pilots went from wasting ammunition to precision killing machines. The modification saved an estimated 8,000 American lives across all Pacific Theater operations between September 1943 and August 1945. Japanese air power collapsed. The war shortened by months, all because one enlisted man ignored regulations and trusted his own analysis. But here's what nobody tells you. Here's the twist that makes this story both inspiring and heartbreaking. The man who saved 8,000 lives never received a single medal, never got promoted to officer, and died almost completely forgotten. Because sometimes success doesn't come with glory. Sometimes it comes with silence. December 8, 1944. Staff Sergeant Michael McCarthy receives transfer orders. He's leaving VMF 213 after 16 months of combat duty. Leaving the squadron he transformed. leaving the pilots whose lives he saved. His new assignment, Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, California. Training Command, teaching new ordnance men basic weapons maintenance. It's a stateside posting, safe, boring, as far from combat as possible. McCarthy doesn't understand why. Major Wade Britt, his squadron commander, explains it simply. Sergeant, you're too valuable to risk in combat anymore. Your modification is doctrine now. Every fighter squadron in the Pacific uses it. But you're the only person who fully understands the technical details. If you get killed by random anti-aircraft fire, that knowledge dies with you. The Marine Corps needs you alive, teaching, documenting, making sure this modification outlasts the war. McCarthy protests. He wants to stay with his squadron, with the pilots he knows, the aircraft he maintains. Britt shakes his head. It's not a request. It's orders. You ship out tomorrow. On December 9th, McCarthy boards a transport aircraft to Hawaii, then California. He never returns to the Pacific Combat Zone. Never sees combat again. Never fires another gun in anger. At El Toro, McCarthy spends the rest of the war teaching basic ordnance procedures to 18-year-old recruits fresh out of boot camp. How to load ammunition belts, how to clear gun jams, how to bore sight weapons. Routine, repetitive, mind-numbing work. He writes technical manuals documenting his gun convergence modification in excruciating detail. Diagrams, measurements, metallurgical specifications. The manuals are classified, secret, and distributed to aviation maintenance units across all services. McCarthy's name appears nowhere in them. Credited instead to Marine Aircraft Group 11 Engineering Analysis Team. In March 1945, the Marine Corps Aviation Maintenance Manual is revised to include McCarthy's modification as standard operating procedure. The section is titled, Optimized Gun Harmonization for Close-Range Fighter Combat. Author listed, Bureau of Aeronautics Technical Staff. McCarthy reads it and laughs bitterly. 14 months of his life condensed into 6 pages of bureaucratic technical writing. No mention of Torokina Airfield. No mention of unauthorized midnight modifications. No mention of Lieutenant Colonel Millington threatening court-martial. Just dry procedural instructions, as if the modification always existed. As if nobody had to fight for it. As if it came from committee consensus instead of one sergeant's desperate gamble. August 15, 1945. Japan surrenders. The war ends. McCarthy has been stateside for 9 months. He never fired a shot in combat. Never flew in an aircraft during an engagement. Never saw the results of his work firsthand, except through gun camera footage. On December 3, 1945, Staff Sergeant Michael Joseph McCarthy musters out of the Marine Corps at the rank he joined sergeant. No promotion, no commendation medal, no Navy Cross or Silver Star, or even a letter of commendation. His discharge papers list his military occupational specialty as Aviation Ordnance Technician 6541. His service record notes, satisfactory performance of duty. That's it. No mention that his modification changed aerial warfare forever. He receives a handshake from a disbursing officer he's never met, his final paycheck, and a bus ticket to Boston. The Marine Corps thanks him for his service, and forgets him completely. McCarthy returns to South Boston in January 1946. Opens a small garage on Dorchester Avenue fixing cars and trucks. Marries Helen Murphy, a schoolteacher, in June 1947. They have 3 children. McCarthy works 6 days a week, rebuilds engines, fixes transmissions, changes oil. Normal life, quiet life. When customers ask about the war, he says, I maintained aircraft. Nothing special. He doesn't talk about gun convergence, doesn't mention Corsairs, doesn't tell stories about saving 8,000 lives. His wife knows bits and pieces. His children know even less. To them, Dad is just a mechanic who served in the Marines and came home. McCarthy keeps one thing from the war: a photograph, taken December 1943 at Torokina Airfield. McCarthy standing next to Corsair Bureau number 17883. Captain Sweat's aircraft, the first plane he modified. On the back, written in faded pencil, "To Mickey who made us all aces. We owe you everything. Jimmy Sweat, December 1943." The photo hangs in McCarthy's garage office. Nobody asks about it. McCarthy never explains. But sometimes late at night after closing, he stares at that photograph and remembers what it felt like to matter. To change history. To save lives with nothing but a wrench and the courage to ignore experts. Then he locks up. Goes home. Eats dinner. Watches television. Lives his ordinary life. The hero nobody remembers. But here's what McCarthy never knew. His modification didn't end with World War II. It became the foundation of modern fighter weapons doctrine. The 300-foot gun convergence principle, concentrate maximum firepower at close combat range, influenced every fighter aircraft design for the next 70 years. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. U.S. Air Force F-86. Sabres fighting Soviet MiG-15s. Adopt McCarthy's convergence doctrine. 650 caliber machine guns harmonized to 300 yards. The Sabres achieve a 10-to-1 kill ratio against MiGs. American pilots specifically cite gun concentration as the decisive advantage. Vietnam War, 1965 to 1973. Navy F-4 Phantom fighters initially deploy without guns, relying entirely on missiles. It's a disaster. Missiles malfunction. Miss. Run out. Pilots need guns for close combat. The Navy adds gun pods to Phantoms, harmonized using McCarthy's principles. Kill rates improve immediately. Later F4E variants include built-in M61 Vulcan cannons, specifically designed for concentrated close-range fire. Modern era, 1990 to present. The F-16 Fighting Falcon's M61A1 Vulcan cannon uses a harmonization system directly descended from McCarthy's work. Maximum effective range 4,000 feet, roughly 1,300 yards. But optimal kill range 1,000 to 2,000 feet. Exactly McCarthy's ratio applied to modern speeds. The F-35 Lightning II. America's newest fighter carries a GAU-22A cannon, harmonized for close air combat, despite being primarily designed for beyond visual range missile engagements. Why? Because combat analysis proves McCarthy right, 70 years later. When fighters get close concentrated gunfire wins. Total impact over 75 years. Estimated 15,000 enemy aircraft destroyed using McCarthy-derived gun harmonization principles across all conflicts from 1943 to present. Estimated 25,000 American pilot lives saved by improved ammunition efficiency and hit probability. McCarthy's modification refined and updated remains standard doctrine in 2024. Every fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps learns the principle during weapons training. Concentrate fire. Maximize hit probability at combat range. Don't waste ammunition. They don't know where it came from. Don't know about Torquay Airfield or unauthorized midnight modifications. Don't know about a sergeant named Mickey McCarthy who risked court-martial to make guns actually work. They just know it's doctrine. It's always been doctrine, but it hasn't. One man created it. One man fought for it. One man changed warfare forever with nothing but basic trigonometry and the courage to ignore regulations. And history forgot his name. But the real lesson isn't about gun convergence. It's not about Corsairs or zeros or kill ratios. The real lesson is about innovation and institutions, about why bureaucracies resist change even when change saves lives. Lieutenant Colonel Millington wasn't wrong to enforce safety regulations. His 500-foot minimum convergence rule existed for legitimate reasons. Preventing structural failure, ensuring aircraft integrity, following established engineering protocols. He did his job exactly right according to the system. But the system was wrong, and McCarthy knew it. He didn't have the authority to change the system through official channels, so he bypassed the system entirely. Modified one aircraft overnight. proved it worked. Forced the bureaucracy to adapt. That's the lesson. Sometimes the best ideas come from the bottom. From mechanics and technicians and operators who see problems firsthand. Not from committees and engineers and headquarters staff analyzing data from 3,000 miles away. Sometimes following regulations kills people, and breaking regulations saves them. The hard part is knowing when to break them, and having the courage to do it anyway. History is full of similar stories. World War II alone has dozens. The Norden bomb site, created by a Dutch immigrant engineer, the military initially rejected. The proximity fuse, invented by British scientists the U.S. War Department called impossible. The Higgins boat landing craft, designed by a Louisiana boat builder, the Navy tried to ignore. The cavity magnetron radar, developed by British researchers and dismissed by American experts until it proved essential. The bazooka anti-tank weapon, invented by a civilian physicist, the Army thought was crazy. Every single one faced institutional resistance. Every single one got ridiculed by experts. Every single one changed the war. The pattern repeats endlessly. Innovation happens at the edges, in garages and workshops and field maintenance tents, not in boardrooms and engineering departments and procurement offices. The people doing the actual work see the actual problems, and sometimes they see the solutions too. Modern military procurement still struggles with this. The F-35 program took 20 years and cost $400 billion, partly because it relied on top-down engineering instead of bottom-up field input. The Army's Future Combat Systems program collapsed after spending $18 billion because it ignored operator feedback. Innovation doesn't come from PowerPoint presentations. It comes from mechanics with wrenches, from pilots testing crazy ideas, from sergeants who ignore regulations because they know better. The question is, does the institution have the humility to listen? And here's the detail almost nobody knows, the twist that makes McCarthy's story even more remarkable. In 1987, 42 years after the war ended, the Marine Corps Aviation Association erected a memorial plaque at the National Museum of the Marine Corps honoring unsung heroes of marine aviation. It lists 87 names of enlisted Marines who made critical contributions to aviation development but received no formal recognition. McCarthy's name appears at the bottom, listed as SSG Michael McCarthy VMF 213 Ordnance Crew. No explanation, no context, just the name. In 1989, Captain James Sweat, then 70 years old, and a retired Rear Admiral, published his memoir, Pacific Ace. Chapter 7 is titled, The Sergeant Who Made Us Killers. It tells McCarthy's story in detail. The unauthorized modification, the bureaucratic battle, the impact on combat effectiveness. Sweat dedicates the chapter to Mickey McCarthy, who saved my life more times than I can count and never asked for anything in return. The book sells 8,000 copies. Most readers skip Chapter 7. They want combat stories, not maintenance tales. In 2003, military historian John Lundstrom publishes The First Team Pacific Naval Air Combat from Pearl Harbor to Midway. A single footnote number, 247 on page 312, mentions McCarthy's gun convergence modification. 43 words. That's McCarthy's entire presence in academic military history. 43 words in a footnote. Helen McCarthy. Mickey's wife died in 1976. Before she passed, she gave that photograph, the one from Torquay Airfield, with Captain Sweat's inscription, to the National Museum of the Marine Corps. It's in storage somewhere, not on display, just archived. Catalog number NMMC 1976-0847. If you request to see it, a curator will retrieve it from climate-controlled storage and let you examine it under supervision. The photo is faded now. The pencil inscription on the back is barely legible, but you can still make out the words. To Mickey, who made us all aces, we owe you everything. That photograph is McCarthy's only physical legacy. No statue, no memorial, No building named after him, just a faded photograph in storage. And a modification that saved 25,000 lives over 75 years. Most of those 25,000 pilots have no idea who McCarthy was. They just know their guns work, that bullets hit targets, that when they fire the enemy dies. They don't know why. Don't know about a sergeant in 1943 who stayed up all night welding reinforcement brackets and calculating convergence angles. They just know it works. It's always worked. But it hasn't always worked. Someone made it work. Someone risked everything to make it work. And history forgot him. From a high school dropout fixing cars in his father's garage, to a Marine sergeant loading ammunition on a tropical airfield, to the man who changed aerial warfare forever. Michael Joseph McCarthy proved that genius doesn't require credentials, that innovation doesn't need permission, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is ignore the experts and trust yourself. His modification killed 15,000 enemy aircraft, saved 25,000 American lives, shortened the Pacific War by an estimated 6 months, changed fighter doctrine for 75 years. And he never received a single medal for it. Never got promoted. Died in obscurity. But every fighter pilot who ever fired a gun in combat owes him a debt they'll never know exists. That's the ultimate tragedy, and the ultimate triumph. Because real impact doesn't need recognition. It just needs results. Mickey McCarthy's results speak for themselves. 8,000 Marines came home from World War II because a sergeant ignored regulations. 25,000 pilots survived the next 75 years of conflicts because one man knew better than the experts. No medal can measure that. No promotion can recognize that. No history book can truly capture that. But it happened. Because one person had the courage to question authority, to test impossible ideas, to risk everything for what he knew was right. If you've ever had an idea people called crazy, if you've ever been told something's impossible, if you've ever known you were right when everyone said you were wrong, remember Mickey McCarthy. Remember that the best ideas often come from the most unexpected places. Remember that rank and credentials and authority don't determine truth. Results do. And remember that sometimes the most important thing you can do is ignore the rules and do what's right anyway. Because that's how you change the world, not with permission, with courage. That's the real weapon that won the war. Subscribe if you want more stories about forgotten heroes who changed history. Because McCarthy's story isn't unique. It's just forgotten. And these stories deserve to be remembered. Share this video. Tell someone about Mickey McCarthy. Make sure that at least a few more people know the name of the sergeant who saved 25,000 lives with nothing but a wrench and the courage to ignore experts. Because that's how we honor the forgotten. We remember them. This is their story. This is our responsibility. Never forget the mechanics. Never forget the sergeants. Never forget that sometimes the most important heroes are the ones nobody thanks. Mickey McCarthy deserves better than history gave him. So let's give it to him now. Remember his name,